G'day everyone. Welcome to the Outback Packers podcast, the podcast where two mates from across the world have a yarn talking Packers football and the green and gold. I'm Nick Gregory, joined by my co-host Joe Pearson as always, and today we discuss and try to figure out if the Packers are really dead or not. What's the autopsy report this week, Joe?
Dead on arrival. No, not really. The first maybe the offense is dead on arrival, but the defense actually put up a pretty good first half, and we'll probably talk about a lot of it later. But yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's not quite time to hit the panic button yet, but it's getting pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of at DEFCON. Is it 5? The one that's second worst.
Oh, sure, you're gonna
It's
ask me all this stuff. No, it actually goes up. So, like, if you were to do DEF CON 5, that would be like the safest of safe.
oh, okay, right.
DEF CON 1 is like nuclear holocaust.
Okay, so we're DEFCON 2. So not quite nuclear holocaust, but there is a lot wrong with this team. And it's kind of the past 3 weeks, I think they're continually exacerbating like the issues this team's had kind of the whole Matt LaFleur era. We've been lucky enough to have good enough offenses to kind of get through it and those problems have been minimized. But it really seems like those things kind of come out in full force, and I think that's kind of what's led to the current state this team is in.
Pretty much. I mean, I hate to say it because really you can't place blame on a certain, just a single group, but it really has made it obvious that Devontae was probably the glue of the team. And I hate to keep bringing that up because there's nothing anybody could have done about it because he wanted to go to Las Vegas no matter what. But I mean, it's like losing Devontae lost all offensive capabilities and the heart of the team. So
Yeah,
somebody needs to step up.
I think he was he was definitely he was definitely the thing that kept this offense going. But I feel that his presence, which I think a lot of people are aware of, I think his presence really kind of masked a lot of these issues and kind of allowed them to get away with being like pretty lazy in some ways. Which obviously he's a fantastic player, and the way they ran the offense with him is the way they should have ran it, like 90% of the time. But kind of the way he gets open so quickly really helps with the O line as well. The the gravity that he brings with him on the field, that helps out the run game, that helps out the other receivers, and now that there's no big distraction to kind of hide these things, I think that's kind of what we're seeing now.
Pretty much. I I really don't have any more to add to that because you pretty well captured it. I mean, you said it. The team seems to have gotten lazy because they relied on Devontae a little too much, specifically the guy that throws the ball. But you
Yeah.
know, it's still early. It's 3-3. Obviously, we're not going to have another 13-3 season unless they really go on an amazing run. But there's still a lot of season left.
Well, with a 17 game schedule, we can theoretically go 13-4 again, so we can keep the 13 win streak. But yeah, I think I'm with you. I don't really see it happening.
Yeah,
so yeah,
they would have to like amazingly not lose any games for the rest of the season, and
yeah,
I don't think any team could do that right now.
yeah. And while we're on the topic of talking about a record and talking about the outlook on the season, let's just take this moment to have a quick look around not only the NFC and the NFL, but more closely in our division. We mentioned this last episode, but it's kind of a little bit scary where for the first time in a long time, we're sitting kind of in the back seat. The Vikings driving the division, the NFC North. They're ahead by 2 games now. They're one of the only 5-1 teams in the NFL, and doesn't feel great. If I'm honest, does not feel fantastic.
I think they'll crash. I because Kirk Cousins is going to be Kirk Cousins. I mean, obviously they have Justin Jefferson, and he's an amazing athlete, and the defense has stepped up, but they're one or two entries away from being nothing.
Yeah,
And so I don't think they're gonna. I don't see him going completely flat, but I don't see him keeping up the success they've had so far. Uh,
y-
Now it's going to be a battle. It's definitely going to be a battle for the NFC North.
for
Uh,
sure.
you know, mainly between the Vikings and the Packers, but it, I just don't see him sustaining what they've been doing right now. Not with
Yeah, and
Kirk Cousins at quarterback.
I think they're kind of in a, almost like that 2019 Packers most fraudulent 13-3 team kind of mold. I don't like. I see them kind of having the ability to cruise through, well, not cruise through, but manage to get their way through a lot of this schedule they have and kind of come out on top of a lot of these games. I mean, 2 games, 3 games if we want to win it. It's quite actually a significant lead even this early in the season. All the like, if you think about it, if we beat them the second game and they drop another game, we'll be in the lead for the division. But that also requires us to be, entirely undefeated. And it's going to be tough, as you said, for the Packers to really kind of wrest control back from the Vikings. But honestly, I don't think the Packers don't really deserve it at this point. So
Well, maybe that'd be the key is get the wild card spot. That's how the Packers won their last Super Bowl was through the wild card spot. So I know there's some people trying to put a comparison between this team and the 2010 team, which there's no way you can because the 2010 team had an amazing wide receiver group. So it,
yeah,
but I mean, I don't think it's going to be quite as big a fight because, like I said, the Vikings aren't going to sustain just like you said, the Packers aren't going to go undefeated the rest of the season. There's no way the Vikings go undefeated for the rest of the season. So it, I mean, I understand what you're saying, where the Vikings would have the tiebreaker as of this moment, but I, things can change. It's a long season. The team that I'm really surprised about, even though it doesn't hurt my feelings, is the Buccaneers. I mean, they even lost to the the Steelers. Who would have thought they would have lost to the Steelers?
pretty funny
But then
actually.
again, who would have thought the Packers would have lost to the Giants and the Jets? But I mean, it,
Well, exactly. Our
so
our opponents for next week, this Thursday night game, Bears versus Commanders. It's always funny to just laugh. Haha, this team's so incompetent. Our Justin Fields sucks. And then the game swings around for us, and it's like, oh, well, can't really laugh anymore, can we?
it's if we would have if the Packers would have played like a lot of people thought they were going to play and they were sitting at 5-1 like the Vikings are, I would call this Commanders game a trap game because it's a team that everybody's looking past, and like you said, even the Bears tried to look past them and still came out on the short end of that stick. But right now, with the way the Packers are playing and being on a 2-game skid right now, there's no way they should be looking past this Commanders team.
Yeah, I think we're officially at the point where there's no game from any team in the league that should be considered a trap game for the Packers. Unfortunately, I think and that should always be the case, really. But I don't think this Packers team is really good enough to look over anyone in the league at the moment. So yeah, I mean, I think kind of like I was talking about last week. This kind of shifting of the conference and the league as a whole. Um, I just feel, look, I mean, the Packers are objectively not in a great spot, and it's always funny to just, yeah, like you said, go back to the 2010 season. Oh, they were 3-3 at this point in the season, and they were complaining about how Charles Woodson wasn't in man coverage enough at that point in the season. But it's definitely not the same thing. But there always is hope. Teams always can get better, and I think I'm guilty of kind of judging teams too early on in the season, and like with that 2020 season, I completely wrote off the Bucks like halfway through the season. Vita Vea out, and they were playing pretty sloppily during the season up until like the last like 3 or 4 weeks. And I think, you know, if we look at like the most optimistic view, best case scenario, maybe we kind of sneak in as that sixth seed, 5 seed. You know, we could, theoretically have a chance. It's all about just getting into the playoffs. I think this is probably really like the last like proper kind of window before we start seeing some really big changes next year if Rogers retires. So look, all I want from this team is get into the playoffs, figure out the rest later. There's always going to be a chance, but you need to clean up some things, and I think that's very obvious as we're about to talk about.
Yeah, and we can talk about the Rogers retirement stuff at a completely different podcast later in the season because I have some thoughts on that one too. But yeah, there's a changing tide, and it's not going to be a good one for the Packers.
Yeah, I think, yeah, the last thing I'll say in this recap is just that, it's not a good outlook for the Packers at the moment, but looking around the division, I mean, sorry, the conference, it's kind of, it's kind of the Eagles and everyone else. And even the AFC, it's the Bills and the Chiefs, and it's everyone else. You know, the rest of the conference is still pretty wide open in terms of how good the teams and how consistent the teams actually are. So yeah, I'm not holding my breath for us to come back and go completely undefeated and run the table again, but I'm not ready to just fully write us off and start selling at the trade deadline just yet.
It'd be kind of funny though. I would it would be interesting to see what the Packers would try to sell off.
I think that's also another podcast, but yes, I definitely don't disagree. So yeah, let's get into it. Deep sighs, light your incense, start praying. We're gonna get into this this another heartbreaking loss. I mean, really, it's these are games that I think not to. I think I'll start this by saying we shouldn't discredit the Jets. They are a very young, very hungry team with an amazing head coach as a people motivator, and they have a good offensive design, good defensive design. The only thing that's really holding them back is kind of the progression of these players as young as a lot of them are. And yeah, I think some of this is probably a symptom of not taking them as seriously. And when you look at the week before the Packers, when they crushed the Dolphins, it's kind of a similar, almost like a similar thing that happened. They were in the lead for a lot of the game, but they didn't fully kind of blow past the Dolphins until that fourth quarter where they scored 3 touchdowns. And that's a little bit of what happened this week. I mean, obviously a very tough game, but like at halftime, the game was what 3-3, 0-0. Like it's not like the Packers never had a chance in this. It's just kind of those mistakes just kind of building and building, the sloppiness, the laziness, the lack of drive, and lack of leadership, as we talk about, just seems like
Well,
every
no
single
heart.
week.
Just say it. No heart. There is no
Yeah,
heart in this team.
yeah, and if we keep losing games, it's going to be really tough for that to be fixed. Really, yeah, I'm like it was really lovely to see Matt LaFleur get fired up, bench Royce Newman. You know, I think
Yeah, yeah, for
the
a play, and then the guy he brought in hurts his bicep, and Royce Newman goes right
yeah,
back in.
yeah, and I think for that drive, they actually did look a little bit better, like to start that drive. Um, but I think like those are like that's what you need to see from the head coach. Like every single week it's that's on me. I need to do better. We need to give Aaron Jones more touches. Blah blah blah. But it's like you need to
Yeah,
like
I'm getting tired of these coach speak, and I did try to listen to some of the Lafleur press conference, and I'm really glad some of the beat writers were kind of pressing him on things, and they were also with Aaron Rodgers too. I right now I'm having a hard time remembering back, but I think Jason Wilde really hammered away at something with Rodgers when Rodgers made the statement about the offense maybe needs to be more simple or simplified, and Wildy was really hammering away at that, like, okay, what are you talking about? It needs to be more simplified, trying to press him, and Rodgers wouldn't give him an answer for it. But I think everybody's getting tired of the cliche answers that they're getting for their questions. When I mean, it would be different if this team was 6-0 right now and on a hot streak and scoring 40 points a game, and the defense is holding other teams to 10 points a game. But it would be understandable to get those cliche answers. But right now, they're a bad team. They're a fraud 3-3. I mean, think about it. The Patriots game, it came to overtime, and they still had a hard time winning it in overtime. The Bears game seems to be the only game that they really handled their business. I'm trying to think, what was the other win that they had? Bears,
The Buccaneers.
Buccaneers. Yeah, the Buccaneers almost came to overtime. It came down to the last play. So, yeah, it just y people are wanting answers for this crap play, and it all starts at the top. And I mean, I'm at a loss for words of some of the stuff that's going on. But you were talking about like the offensive line. That was a key of emphasis that they need to work on. That was horrible offensive line play throughout the game.
Just really
Rodgers was getting
gross. Really
pressured,
gross.
hit, you know, Rodgers is already hurting. He injured his thumb against the Giants, and for him to take the hits that he was taking was uncalled for. And I really question what's going on with the offensive line, because you would think. I mean, I'm glad Lafleur finally did try to pull Newman, and I know Newman's your boy and everything, but it's painful. I think he's given up what 15 pressures already this year in like 17 actual pass set, uh
Yeah.
or it's some weird stat like that. And he was giving up like 5 pressures in this game alone. I'm trying to think of what the stat was and who put it out there, but it was they were actually in pass protection for so many snaps, and Newman gave up the most pressures at 5. So I kind of applaud Lafleur for trying to make a move, but he went to Jake Hansen. And you know how we've already talked about Jake Hansen several times on this podcast. He's not the answer either. But you've got guys like you got Zach Tom sitting there, who seemed
Yeah.
to have, in the limited play he had against Minnesota, seemed to, hold up. So why did you go right to Jake Hansen and not put Zach Tom in there? Or, hey, let's do the weird thing. This isn't working right now. Let's kick Elton back into guard, put him at right guard, and put Yash at right tackle. Something's got to be better than what we're doing right now. And I'm hoping it'll carry over, and for this next game, they'll do that. I mean, I'm not saying Yash is going to be this great right tackle. I mean, nobody expected him to be this terrific left tackle because he was an undrafted free agent, and he's bounced around on the practice squad, and he came out of nowhere. But you never know until you give him a chance, and practice isn't going to tell you everything. So let's do it. You could have done it right then, halftime. You were wanting to make a change anyway, do it. But they wait, and it's getting tiring.
Yeah.
And Rodgers is going to get sick of it because he's going to get tired of getting hit all the time.
Yeah. I think I I really hate to be the body language analyst, the reading into what's happening. But like I think it kind of seemed like it's a common theme among these losses, or when they quote unquote get punched in the mouth, like this kind of sense of just giving up or not wanting to be there. Like purely from Rogers' perspective, it's just like he feels like he's kind of was over it, and especially like I understand it to some degree when he's like getting hit that hard and that often, but dude, you're getting paid the highest wage as a quarterback. Literally set the market this offseason. And yeah, the least you could do is just be present for the games, like he's out there, he's hurting, I get that, but he's like he just seems so aloof at times, and it seems like he's so hesitant to just provide some kind of positive example beyond his performance, which even that is not very good at the moment. Um, as we like I hate to sound like a broken record, but we always talk about kind of the leadership of this team and the lack thereof, and as you said, it starts at the top, and what we're getting from Rogers is just not good enough. And if he was playing well, other things around him were just crumbling. That's one thing, but the fact that he's out there, like he's throwing receivers at the wrong leverage. He's not reading the field very well. And like there is pressure, but he's still getting jumpy. He is like his accuracy is not what it's been. The deep ball issues have only gotten worse. You know, like he's not the only problem, but he's like a pretty big part of it.
I won't say his deep ball's getting worse. I think he can still sling it, and he's shown he can still sling it. I just don't think he trusts his receivers enough anymore. I mean, last year with Devontae, you could see that he could still sling it, and he would. But now it just seems like he's not trusting his guys enough to throw it where he needs to put it. He's either overshooting them, undershooting them, trying to do the back shoulder. Well, these guys aren't used to it because they've never done it before. You can't just expect them to, oh my God, magically it comes to me. you know,
Yeah,
it, it it comes with work. And I hate to sound like a broken record myself, but this is why you play in the preseason. This is how you get your guys used to it. This is how you implement the way you play. You play in the preseason. You come to the workouts. You do the workouts. You play in the preseason. You don't have to play full games in the preseason. But look at the teams that are being successful right now. What's the common denominator with it? A lot of their starters played in preseason, especially when they were new to the team. So, I mean, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that because, oh, well, you don't want him to get injured, and, that's just an injury waiting to happen, and he don't need to play in the preseason. But now we're seeing why they need to do some kind of work in the preseason.
yeah. Look, I'm not a big preseason believer, but I think you can't disagree that it wouldn't have helped at the very least, especially with so many new moving pieces and being present
Right,
for
with
like
all the
OTAs.
turnover, Right, with all the turnover, you got to have work. You can't just come in and rely on, oh, well, I got my buddy Randall, and the Lizard King is back. We'll be good. We'll be good. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and yeah, so that's something I want to go into a little bit is just this kind of really weird power dynamic between Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers. When Matt LaFleur was first hired, I think we all know the story by now. Matt LaFleur was supposedly just like a dummy coach just to set up Aaron Rodgers to have more or less full control of the team, and you know there was going to be fighting and argument. They're going to hate each other. I think all that stuff is completely ludicrous, but I think there is definitely some truth to the situation when you look at how hesitant Matt LaFleur is to speak up and be the head coach. This is his team. This is an Aaron Rodgers team, as much as he
Now,
likes to think so.
well, I'm going to interrupt you with that. Think about it, though. When he first came in, he said, this is my team. Aaron needs to toe the line. And it was working. And then Aaron threw his hissy fit in 2019, and that's when Jordan Love was drafted, and or 2020 is when Love was drafted. LaFleur had the team, and it started in 2019. Sorry, I'm mixing up my timelines here. 2019, LaFleur came in, said, "This is my team. Aaron needs to toe the line," and they got along. I mean, you called it a fraud 13-3 that year, but I don't call it a fraud. He actually bought in, he towed the line. They had success. They made it as deep as they did. Couple injuries hurt him, but I mean, major injuries. Bach getting hurt made all the difference in the world that year. But then 2020 is when Rodgers threw his hissy fit, and well, they're not giving me enough playmakers, and I want out, I want out. And then they draft Jordan Love, and then it got even worse. Well, I want out. I'm tired of this, and that's when things changed, because now it's like, okay, now we gotta appease the big baby, otherwise he's gonna pull his crap again. And that's when we saw LaFleur turn more pacifist, and I hate it. I don't get me wrong. I like Aaron Rodgers. I've been a big supporter of Aaron Rodgers. I was probably one of the few people that was happy when the Packers drafted Aaron Rodgers. But I this stuff's getting old, because he always said that he was hoped he never turned into Brett Favre, and he's starting to turn into Brett Favre, and it's getting old. And you know, he needs to grow up. He's the veteran player. He's the leader of the team, whether he wants to be or not. He's got to play nice, because it's not his team. If he wants it to be his team, then he needs to become the head coach, because it's the head coach's job to be the leader of this team.
Totally agree.
Sorry, rant, soapbox. It's probably not going to be the last rant of the night.
um, yeah, yeah. I think he's in a tough position, and I don't envy him. But like I said, he needs to like take this team by the horns and tell them how he's going to run it. Doesn't mean he needs to demean anyone or be an asshole, but he needs to like he did at that in that huddle they had before that drive in the first half. He just needs to give him the kick in the ass and reignite a fire, reignite some spark in his team. As he
I
likes to say, bring the
disagree.
juice.
Maybe he needs to be an asshole. I mean, think back at the stories that they tell about Vince Lombardi. Uh, I mean, Jerry Kramer famously said that there was one practice where Vince just ripped the living hell out of him because he missed a blocking assignment or whatever. And this was in practice. And he just ripped him a new one and made him run laps. But then when he went into the locker room, he muscled his head and said, "You're going to be one of the greatest guards in this game." And at that moment, Jerry said that he knew that he'd live or die for this coach. Maybe we need that.
Yeah, well, that's what
You
I'm
know,
saying. Like he needs to be a hard ass, but he's still going to support the team. He's not going to be like Joe Judge, just like punishing these guys for no reason. I have no reason to think he'll be doing that. But yeah, I think we're both on the same page here. He just needs to show some semblance of leadership. It really feels like he's kind of lost the team, and he's kind of doing a lot of trying to keep people happy, which honestly, it's not his job to baby Aaron Rodgers. His job is to win him the two consecutive MVPs and resurrect his career and this dead offense like he has done for the past three seasons. And he's proven that he can do that. I think he just kind of loses sight sometimes with the distractions and the noise, and perhaps he's not the most resilient head coach in the league, but he's also a very young head coach. I don't imagine we've seen the best form of Matt LaFleur just yet either. And I don't think we're going to see the best form of him with Aaron Rodgers acting like this.
no, no, he's not. I mean, like I've said before, I don't think Rodgers is fully bought into the system, and if he would fully buy into the system, we would have Super Bowl after Super Bowl. We'd probably have back-to-back Super Bowls right now. But he
I
won't
think
buy into the system.
I think he definitely bought in 2020, and the system changed slightly in 2021, and it just seems like we've kind of gone in the opposite direction now this
No, I
season.
think he might have bought in a little bit in 2019, but remember 2020 is when he threw his hissy fit. So I
Yeah, but
think he
if you look at the scheme and the way that they were playing that season, the amount of motion they were using, uh, like that, Devontae Adams was still featured as the leading receiver, obviously,
right,
but
but in 2020, I think he was playing lights out because he wanted to say, "Hey, you drafted this kid to take my spot, so now I'm going to show you what you're going to lose." So I don't even count 2020. 2019, I'll agree with you that he kind of bought into the system, and that's why they played over what everybody expected him to play. And then 2021, I think is when he started to not buy into the system, if you get what I'm saying with that. And then
yeah, but
2022 is where we're seeing him regress even further.
yeah, sure. I think I'm just definitely I'm of the opinion that Aaron Rodgers' MVP play is a direct result of Matt LaFleur. You look at like even just as his growth as a play caller from 2019 to 2020, the way guys were getting open, like I'm not saying that anyone could have been the MVP, but that was a very well run, well designed offense, and it had the benefit of a fantastic O line, obviously. But the way that that team was operating for Aaron Rodgers and the ease of life that he had in that system that year was just incredible. And I think honestly, I'll put it probably his success that season was more about the coaching and more about the team around him than his play itself, which was obviously fantastic and deserving of MVP that season. But I'm a big believer in what Matt LaFleur wants to do, and I think that what he can do. Um, yeah, I just think that for whatever reason, they've just strayed so far from the intended vision, which, as we talked about last week, what Mike LaFleur was doing, his brother, is kind of
It was the
exactly what.
same concepts.
Yeah, which is it was almost like, and Ben Fennell made the same point. It's kind of like almost like a glimpse back to the 2020 season. The amount of motion, the amount of ease, the centering around the running back. You know, making things easier on the quarterback. I mean, like Jesus, like look at Zach Wilson's stat line in the game. He didn't throw a single touchdown. Didn't even throw like 450 yards, and they won by 17 points. Like, things shouldn't be so on. You know, like, things should be easier for the team through the scheme and should play to the player's strengths and what you have on the team. They ran their offense in the second half through the running back, and granted, some of that was also poor defensive performance, but they tried a
And
lot
they
harder
got,
to play to that.
yeah, and they got, uh, I don't want to say away with anything because it wasn't like they were cheating or anything. I'm trying to think of my wording. They got some breaks, the blocked kick, the blocked field goal, the blocked punt return for a touchdown, AJ Dillon fumbling. Uh, there was one other one, wasn't there?
Uh,
No, maybe that was all the major ones,
I
but
don't
I
think,
mean
yeah,
they had. Well, no, there was one other one, and it might not have made or broke the game, but Aaron Rodgers not just running the fucking ball.
yeah,
Late in the game, he had wide open. He may not have got the first down, being that he slowed down a little bit, but it would have. He had a wide open space. It would have been a lot better than trying to fit it into tight coverage. Worst case scenario is you go for your slide and they hit you late and you get another 15 yards for roughing the passer.
yeah. Um, yeah, I think, yeah, like, I don't want to discredit what the Jets did because I really admire the way they approached the game. And Robert Sala in his post game press conference, that really searing comment about the mentality of the Packers as a team. You can't even like argue against that at this point because we've been showing that time and time again. Um, but yeah, I think it's just far from the best performance from this Packers team. The as we already talked about, the O line was just horrible, and the defense just so good in that first half, but just so unwilling to finish out the game and just maintain consistency. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah,
Well, and it seems like it's common topics week in and week out. Like I'm going through your show notes here, and Aaron Jones. Here we go again. Lack of touches, lack of touches, lack of touches. And then we get the LaFleur. Yeah, that's on me. I need to do better in getting him involved in the game. Well, no shit. You're the head coach. You call the plays. Now, granted, I will say that at least half the calls are run through Rogers, and Rogers probably checks out of things because I know they run a lot of RPO situations, and Rogers is going to pull the ball and throw it no matter what. But you know, when you've got these playmakers, you got to get them involved. And I don't know. I know we like to try to say the good things and the bad things of the game, but really, there's not a lot of good things that came out of this game, other
Yeah.
than in the first half, the defense played well. They held them to 3 points. Barry actually came through with what he said he was going to do and stopped the heavy zone coverage and let Jair trail Garrett. It's Garrett Wilson, right?
Yeah, Garrett Wilson.
Yeah. For some reason, it wasn't making sense in my mind calling him Garrett Wilson. Um, and held Garrett down pretty good. I mean, you would thought that he would be him and Corey Davis would have been the guys that would have torched the Packers. And I think Corey Davis had a couple of plays, but outside of that, other than some mundane catches and that, Jair held up his own, and we knew he would. Jair is a press man corner. Razul is a press man corner. Stokes, we're not sure what Stokes is. He should be a press man corner, but he's been kind of struggling so far this year. But it's really, and Amos looked great. The D line looked amazing. Your boy Kingsley, Enigbare,
Oh yeah,
Enibari,
and Agbury.
first first career sack. I mean, he was looking good. I think, and I'm not a big follower of PFF, but I see it pop up on my timeline every once in a while. He graded out as like an elite grade from this game.
Yeah.
So I mean, they played well in the first half, but then they disappeared. I don't know if it was because they were getting gas because they were getting thrown out on the field all the time and the offense wasn't sustaining drives, or what was going on. Maybe LaFleur was like, fuck you guys. I gave you a half of press man cover and now I'm going to go back to my normal scheme. And Quay Walker, sure, he he wasn't horrible up until that. What was it? It was a draw play, wasn't it? Or it was a screenplay,
Yeah, one
and
where he kind of
he
I know exactly
overran
what you're
it,
talking about.
and then he looked lost after he overran it. But I mean, for like good things that came out of the game, that's about it. Now I've got a personal one because me and Nick have been going back and forth on this every week, and that's Amari actually getting offensive snaps. And
One
he
catch.
had the one catch, but it goes back to my, and here goes to Joe's conspiracy corner, where I think it's more Aaron Rodgers wants nothing to do with Amari than the coaches don't want anything to do with Amari, because it took Randall Cobb getting injured for Amari to actually see snaps in the game. Well, that tells me right there, Aaron prefers Cobb and wants nothing to do with Amari. It's obvious. That's why he demanded for them to trade for Cobb. He didn't want Amari because they wanted Amari to be Cobb. And you know, I but I was happy. He was getting snaps, and for being a smaller compact receiver, I thought it was even neat that they had him in pass protection once, and he wasn't horrible. I mean, he wasn't going to be great because he is a smaller guy, but I thought he did pretty good. I did see that they took him off kick return after the Cobb injury, and I'm imagine it's because they couldn't afford to lose another wide receiver. And Keyshawn Nixon had a hell of a kick return, 32 yards. Who would have
Yeah,
thought because he was supposed to be just a gunner or a special teams ace, and they throw him back there as a friggin' kick returner, and he takes it 32 yards. And it's amazing we have to be happy with a 32-yard return.
yeah, it kind of illustrates the point of this team is that, and yeah, I mean, look, I'm basically done talking about this game. If you are, I think, you know, this, yeah, this is probably honestly, hopefully, the lowest point of the season. I think I struggled to finish this game quite honestly, and I'm used to waking up quite early in the mornings to watch these games, but it was like 6:30 in the morning at that point, and 7 minutes left in the quarter, in the last quarter, and I was like, we're done. I know that this team is not coming back. I know this team too well to know that they're just not going anywhere. So
Well,
yeah,
let's see if things come to fruition, because if I and this quote has been misquoted so much, and that was after the Giants game. Somebody asked Jair about how he was feeling right now, and I don't have the full quote he said, but I'm pretty sure it was something like, "I'm not too worried about this loss, but if we lose next week against the Jets, I'm going to be worried." And I know that got misconstrued, and then you got the whole Aaron Rodgers, words can, uh, oh, what did he say? Words have power and can form into actions. And it's like, no, I understand what the hell he's saying. He's saying, this is a week to week league. I'm not worried about tonight. Let's worry about next week and winning that game. He just said it in a completely roundabout way. So let's see if things come to fruition and that they're worried and will actually step up and do something. Maybe that's the kick in the ass finally can they needed to put some heart into this team. So yeah,
yeah,
I mean I could rant and rave all night about this game. So if you want to move on, we can move on.
yeah. I think every week we're kind of desperately looking for some form of positivity here. So let's just move on. I think we've both gotten all we wanted to get, or most of it, off our chests.
Well, no, I'm going to break away
Oh,
for a minute
here we go.
because I want to bring this up, and we talked about this before recording, and we really don't have a spot in this, but I do want to say this because I've seen people freaking out on Twitter about it. Robbie Anderson was not going to be the guy to fix this team. We're already having issues with attitude. We don't need to bring in a guy who has an even worse attitude to help out. On top of that, he's 29-year-old speedster with questionable hands who only caught 1,000 yards in one season and then got kicked off the field because he got into it with a coach. If he was this amazing receiver, there is no way the Cardinals would have got him for a 6th and 7th round pick. He would have got an OBJ type deal. He would have got a Amari Cooper type trade. He would have been a high dollar, especially with the cheap ass contract he has. I think they said that whoever picked him up was on the hook for like $650,000 this year. And if they decided to keep him on the team next year, it'd be 12 million. But if they cut him, it wasn't going to cost them anything. That's a cheap ass deal. And you're telling me all they could get was a 6th and 7th round pick for him? That means he's not that good, guys. So let's not freak out about Robbie frickin' Anderson. There,
Yeah, I
I'm
think
done. I'm done.
yeah,
You can
yeah,
we can move
I
on.
agree. I think the last thing I'll say is that yeah, with the plethora of issues this team has that go far beyond personnel, I think yeah, the last thing that would have fixed us, quote unquote, is yeah, Robbie Anderson. And I like him as a player, but he's not going to fix us. And yeah, ending on that, let's look forward. next week. Washington versus Green Bay. Packers go on the road for this one. Um, an opportunity. It feels like I've said this every single week. An opportunity to face a lesser quarterback, which we will go into, a lesser quarterback than perhaps league average, and hopefully kind of try and trace back their steps a little bit, get back to what they were doing in that first half, at least defensively, and just get some kind of energy moving, get the ball rolling, start from ground zero, tear it up. What do we have to do? Does it simplify or I don't know, go in the other direction and complicate it? I don't really care. Let's just see some kind of signs of life. Let's get things started against Washington in Washington. What do you think, Joe?
I think, well, I don't know if you really want to know what I think because I think some weird shit. But about this game specifically, I think it could be a trouble game. Yeah, Washington hasn't looked great. The Packers should easily roll over them. But here we go again. We're going against a team with a backup quarterback, or who's going to be playing their backup quarterback. And, it's not like Heineke is this real slouch. Yeah, he's not the greatest in the world, but he still performed decently for what the Commanders gave him. Well, I guess they were the Washington football team last year, but you know, performed well enough. I mean, if you really want to go there, he's even got a win over Tom Brady. So uh, he's not going to be a slouch. It's not like you're going to have, I don't know, who's Tyrod Taylor or, you know, somebody like that come in and just going to be complete trash. He's capable of throwing 400 yards in the game. So my big concern is this is looking a lot like the New England game. And we're going in there against a backup quarterback who may or may not play good, but then behind him is a rookie quarterback who has a decent arm and as mobile can be. And if Heineke gets hurt, are we going to have Bailey Zappi 2.0 and Sam Howell? I mean, that, that's where it kind of scares me because I'm seeing it's like Yogi Berra would say deja vu all over again. uh I know we're a football podcast and I'm using baseball sayings, but it, it's really weird because there's a lot of parallels. They're an underperforming team. They've got a I know Ron Rivera hasn't been doing well with Washington, but he is a respected coach. They have the pieces on defense. They have some really great pieces on offense. They just can't put it all together. I mean, scary Terry McLaurin, the Diami Brown, the rookie out of Penn State, Dotson.
John
What's his first
Dotson,
name? Yeah.
um, Antonio
Uh,
Gibson.
and then the feel good story, the running back that just came back, Robinson, Brian Robinson, is that his name? He got shot and then, uh,
Yes,
yeah, and he played well coming back. So I mean, you got the feel good story coming with him. They have the pieces if they could just put it all together. I'm not sure what their offensive line is like. I think they gave up.
very injured at the
They're
moment.
giving up. What's that?
Sorry, they're very injured at the moment.
Okay, I was gonna say I think they've given up like the most sacks in the NFL right now, or the second most sacks, or something like that. Is that what the stat is? They've given up like 23 sacks so far this year.
I think quite possibly. I don't have it in front of me here, but they have not been very good. I think they've been basically bottom five, if not bottom eight.
So really, Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Kenny Clark, Kingsley, these guys should feast. But Are we going to get the defense from the first half, or are we going to get the defense from the second half? And are we going to get
Yeah.
them for a full game, or are we going to get them for another half a game?
I
So
think, yeah, I think I'm right with you there. I think um, they have good receivers, good skill position players, but the inside of this offensive line is a little bit chopped up at the moment. I think they have. I'm not sure if he's playing this game, but Charles Leno is starting at left tackle, who's like he's good. He's a good player. Right tackle Sam Cosmi, pretty green player, and the inside is like pretty chopped up. It's like this is I want to see Rashawn. I want to see Kenny Clark. I want to see Jerron Reed. I want to see Dean Larry, who did a few nice things last 2 weeks.
Dean's always good for like one or two games, and then he's pretty
Deflected
pedestrian.
passes. He
Yeah,
loves it.
then he's
Um,
pedestrian the rest of the time. I'm trying
and
to
you
look
know,
at their roster right now, and the tight ends really don't scare me. Logan Thomas is all right, but is usually always injured. Or Armani Rogers is a rookie. Cole Turner's a rookie. They're not
yeah,
really giving me vibes of guys that are going to be
yeah.
uh,
I think
trouble.
yeah. Something I want to see at least once in this game is I'm not sure if you watched the game today. I don't think you did, but there was this play where I forgot his name. The Chargers linebacker. It's a third down. Russell Wilson gets the ball. This guy comes screaming right through the A gap and sacks Russell Wilson for like 10 yards, 12 yards. And Quay Walker mentally is we can see it. He's not there just yet, which is fine. He's a rookie. What he can do is kind of
No, but
what they
he's
did
no
with
Devin Lloyd.
Devin White in his first season. Just blitz him, just throw him at the quarterback. Let him be that human wrecking ball. Just come up the middle. Let him come in on a stunt or a delayed blitz, and just let him go at the quarterback. He's fast. He's strong. He's terrifying, dude. Like when you hear him, when he tackles players, you hear it from halfway across the
Oh,
field.
he
Hell,
thumps. He's a
I
thumper
can
for sure.
I can hear it all the way from Australia. Like like
Well,
he's
I'm
a
sure you put him in with your rugby guys and he'd kill him.
yeah. I mean, he's an intimidating physical presence. And kind of like you think back to that playoff game was it 3 years ago now, where it was a penalty and it was called back, but I think it was like the third quarter or maybe like halfway through that game. Za'Darius Smith just kind of like runs through the middle of the offensive line. No one was even set up, and just like slams Russell Wilson into the ground. It's kind of like that kind of fear factor. Just add a little bit of edge to this defense, and I'm not saying I necessarily want to see like exactly that, like situation, but just blitz him, like get Quay Walker more involved in the ways that he can be involved and the things that he is good at.
Right, and that'd give him more confidence. I mean, the thing
For
a
sure,
rookie always needs is confidence. I mean, look at Romeo Dobbs. You know, he got his first catch out of the way, and now he's been realistically the best receiver on the team so far, out for a fourth round guy.
for sure,
Uh, uh, other than, I hate to say it, but other than that, there's really not been a rookie on our team that's played that great so far this year. Um, Watson's been hurt. Uh,
he's been good when he's on the field, but he's been hurt.
but has he really been good while he's been on the field?
For
I
sure,
mean, theoretically, maybe with some of the end around stuff, but
production
and
wise,
the
not really,
bubbles.
but he's such a useful player for them.
I know, but I'm just talking like in reality, production and stuff like that. He's nowhere near like a Dobbs right now.
For sure, yeah,
I, so I mean, he's not really been the playmaker that they had hoped, which I can't say much because I didn't think he was going to be. I I said it early on that Dobbs was going to be the guy that flashed early. Watson was probably going to be the guy that come on late, and that's just because Watson was a very raw talent. So I didn't think he was going to be that special to start the season, but maybe later on when he got more confidence and they finally got him into the system. that he would be a good player, but he's still no George Pickens.
Not yet. Not yet.
Um,
Um,
but
yeah.
I mean, other than that, really, there's been no rookie player that's played that great. Quay's not been good. Devontae Wyatt, if he's even active, hasn't been that great. Tariq Carpenter, I don't think has even been seeing the field. Um, I'm trying to think what other rookies were there this year. Well, Teray's not
Jonathan
been
Ford.
active.
Yeah,
Ford's
Jonathan
not been
Ford's
active.
Samori Toure.
Um, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, and none of them. So if you were to put a grade on the draft class right now based on production, it would probably be an F.
Sure.
Maybe
For
a
this season,
D.
yeah.
Right. I'm not saying that's what they are. I'm just saying what you see out of them right now.
So far,
You don't
yeah.
see
I get that.
you don't see anything special. Now it's going to all change. These guys are going to get better through time. At least we hope so. But yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, talking about Washington, they have the scheme, they have the pieces. The quarterback situation scares me like it did the New England game. But, hey, let's hopefully, we can kind of jump into who our guy is this week. And I know we both kind of cheated it. Uh, I went with Joe Barry just to see, because if he sticks with what he did in the first half of the Jets game for the whole game, then this should be an easy win, because that means Jair's locked down McLaurin. That means Razul's locked down, Dotson or Diami Brown or whichever one he's covering. Amos has been all over the field making plays. He's getting Quay Walker involved. Rashawn Gary is feasting. Theoretically, if Barry goes with the scheme he did in the first half, Rashawn should have 5 sacks by halftime. So
Yeah.
I know that's exorbitant, but I mean that's just how well they were playing and how terrible the Commanders have been. So
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead and go with your guy.
So yeah, my guy I think is probably like the most obvious one,
You
and that's just
cheated,
Matt Lafleur. Yeah, and I'm proud of it. Yeah,
Belichick.
Matt Lafleur, and I think I think it's the obvious one, and I'm not entirely convinced that I'm going to see anything massive change this week. But even just something, like I said, I just want to see the beginnings of something, the motivation, this kind of improvement on the play calling just a little bit, and managing O line, like the decisiveness to run this team and do what is best for the team. Play with the O line arrangement, even if it doesn't really work out, especially this week with the guys they have in the interior, Deron Payne. Like the you just need to have
Montez
some
Sweat.
yeah, like, and especially with the way you know Elton Jenkins has been struggling a little bit, and Royce Newman slash whoever's going to be filling in that right guard spot. We think it's a legitimate point of concern in a way that Washington can take control of this game. So I just want to see him like tighten the reins a little bit, like remember that he is in control of this team and run it like he wants to.
You know what I think would be amazing?
What's that?
I wish, and maybe this would put a light a fire under some guys, or maybe put a spark, or it would at least get the fans fully behind it. LaFleur needs to show up to this game wearing a fedora and a trench coat, and I want to hear some fucking Lombardiisms come out of him. I know I've been cussing a lot this, but get used to it. Um, I put this show as explicit for a reason, damn it. But he needs to channel his inner Lombardi and just let loose. I mean, Rogers has said that he admired Bart Starr. They became great friends later on. When Rogers came to Green Bay, and that was the thing that made that team successful as the head coach and the quarterback led the team. Lombardi gave him the play. Bart would say, "Yeah, yeah, coach, I'm going to run it, but maybe this next one we should do this." He would give his thoughts, but it was the head coach who made the decisions. So that
For
that would be
sure.
perfect, and it would
For sure.
be perfect to do it in Washington too.
Mhm. And just to finish up here, I would like to go over these over unders, Joe's over and unders for the week. So I want you to just share with the guys what's your top three of the over and unders you have handcrafted for us this week.
Well, it's been so hard to do any kind of over unders because every time I do, they've been hitting like the under on all of them. So
Sadly.
it's been it's been really hard to do. Um, the obvious one is 20.5 points for the Packers. I I'll let you go ahead and choose.
20 and a half.
I know it's low. You would think they'd be able to do more, but if you look at the scores
Yeah,
throughout the season, this is pretty average.
I want to say under. I think they hit 20, and yeah, yeah, I don't see much more than that.
I'd agree with you, but I to make things interesting, I'll go the over. Just it's going to be like a 24 or 27 to 17 or something like that.
Yeah, I think maybe like they score three touchdowns and get like a missed extra point or something like that. I think that that's kind of right on the line of where I would be like assuming they kind of hit. Um, yeah, I don't feel very comfortable about them going much over that, if at all. The way they've been playing and the way I expect this Washington D line to play against the interior, now that they've seen how Green Bay can be manipulated with like power coming from the inside. Um, yeah, I think I'm not sure if the Packers really have a defined path to dominating this game through the offense.
Well, maybe you'd know, but I'm not sure because I haven't really followed. But what's Washington's secondary like?
They're okay, like they're not bad, but I mean, you have Kendall Fuller, you know, uh, came from Broncos, I believe, and sorry, uh, Kansas City, and on the other side, Benjamin St. Just, who was drafted, I think it was last year, like a late round player, um, and like these players that are not the best in the world, but the identity of this Washington defense of the past 3 or 4 years has been that front seven and the pressure and the intimidation coming from those guys playing at the front, not from the secondary. And so I think this is a good opportunity for our wide receivers to get open consistently. And you want to see the run game, but it's going to be really tough to run against such a powerful front consistently in this game.
Well, that's what I was wondering because lately it's been a lot of dink and dunk passes for the Packers. So if they can, if the secondary is not that great, some of these dink and dunk passes should open up, get them chunk yards because that means they can make moves and get out, break away from the secondary because these guys have speed. Lazard is the only one probably that doesn't have the top end speed, but he's not like sloth slow either. Um, so going with that, I'm gonna choose this one because it's gonna make you mad. I'm gonna go Amari Rogers 1.5 catches.
Yeah, I'll say over. Just for you, I'll say over. I think if Cobb's out, and we might see either one of either Winfrey or Toure playing this week, whether Winfrey
Nope.
gets onto the actual active roster.
Yeah, that
Um,
would have to be the case. Winfrey would have to be brought up to the active roster. He is no longer eligible to be brought up from the practice squad,
yeah, exactly. So I think if
and I don't see it
if
happening.
I'm not really sure, to be honest. With Toure on the roster, just give him a chance. One game, whatever. You already lost the
Yeah,
past
no
like two or three in
shit.
a row. So this let's give him a chance, and we'll see how it goes for this one game. But Amari, they showed that they were willing to give him that one catch in the game. I would two catches, whether uh yeah, I mean two catches, yeah, over sure. I think with kind of what we're going to see, it might be a good opportunity if Washington wants to bring what they have to try and stop those better guys and maybe bet on Aaron Rodgers reading the blitz and hitting an Amari Rodgers. Two catches definitely reasonable, or if he gets like a little toss or something like that, I could definitely see.
I'm gonna take the over, but I'm gonna say it's more like 5 catches.
No, no.
And the reason I say that is I think they're gonna get a couple of like the crosser routes for him, but they're also gonna cheat the system like they do anyway, and probably a couple of those touch passes.
Yeah,
And I mean, a lot of people wouldn't consider that a pass, but when it goes into the stat book, it is a pass. So I think they could get him on maybe a slant and a crosser or two, and then just to get things going, probably maybe a couple touch passes.
yeah, sure, I can see that. And what's your last one?
Well, I'm going to combine the two since I've got kind of the same.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm going to do two more. I'm going to do
Yeah.
McLaurin 55.5 yards and Gary 1.5 sacks.
Okay. Gary, I want to say
Like I
under.
said, you're going to go under. I'm gonna go over, and it's just gonna be the 2 sacks because if Barry continues what he did in this past game for the first half, like I said, Gary should feast. He should theoretically have the 2 sacks before halftime. Before halftime. So no, I went over.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm watching
um,
Nick type this in on our itinerary so we can keep track of it, and he put me as under. So I think he's trying to cheat. That way, next week he knows I'm not going to remember what the hell I took, and he's going to say, "Hey, look, he took the under too." Yeah, I know how you Aussies think. And then, of course,
classic
the
Aussie
other one
stitch up.
is, yeah, and the other one I said was the McLaurin 55.5. And my answer is going to be the same way. I would take the under on it because if the defense does what it did and Jair stays on him, Jair's lights out, and I think he'll hold him. It might be like 45 or 50 yards anyway, but yeah, I'll go the under on him.
Yeah, I think especially with someone like Heineke back there. I mean, he does have a bit of rapport with McLaurin, so I think if they're smart, they'll probably try and take advantage of the fact that he is familiar with McLaurin and try and take him away. Um, but yeah, if all goes well, we do win and the defense plays well, I could definitely see McLaurin going under 55 yards. Might be end up being a Dotson game or an Antonio Gibson game, or I think I think it's definitely within the realm of possibility, and would not be surprised at all if he's under 55.5 yards.
Yeah, I really, like I said, if Jair shadows him, totally agree. It's going to be an under. But if Barry goes back to his soft zone coverage, those crossers are going to live forever. And even with Heineke or Sam Howell, as long as that crosser is there on soft zone coverage, they're going to
Yeah.
nail it every time.
Yeah. And so yeah, that's all that I have to say about Washington. Unless you have anything else you want to bring up,
No, not that I can think of.
right?
Not for
Um,
Washington. I mean, we've got a lot of things in the works for the next for future episodes. Hopefully, we can get more stuff planned. Just kind of looking ahead on things. Maybe get some guests in here,
for sure.
and so we're not just arguing with ourselves. Add somebody else into this madhouse.
Yeah, I think that's us for this week, guys. As always, you can find us on Twitter at NicholasGRGR and at Iowa_Joe86. This week,
Don't
actually, we
forget our new.
started. Yes, we started an actual Twitter account for the podcast. Probably should have started with that. That's at Outback_Packers on Twitter. Feel free to give us a follow, share us around, retweet, etc., etc. And until next time, we'll see you later.